Get ready for a touching exchange.
What are the best ways that you support him?
Especially because I don't read media or press.
Yeah.
I'm a good barometer. I'm only looking at it through the lens of loving him.
Yeah.
So love's the only lens. Sure, we saw that in the Oprah interview where Meghan didn't have self-protective and thus self-serving motives at all.
There was no guidance as well, right? You know, unlike what you see in the movies, there's no class on how to speak, how to cross your legs.
Nobody prepares you.
No.
This just radiates love.
Lens of loving him.
Yeah.
Not reading media or press isn't something to be proud of. All it suggests is that the person saying it is hypersensitive to criticism. And more importantly, how can you be a reliable soundboard or barometer if you don't know or pretend not to know what's being said about you in the press? What has Meghan's barometer caused Harry to do? It's caused him to make private matters public.
And he was coming for my wife. She wasn't there at the time. He was shouting at me. I was shouting back at him. And he snapped. And he pushed me to the floor.
What will help nurture him and help him find balance?
Yeah.
Earlier, Meghan made a statement that revealed a lot about how she views herself and Prince Harry.
I always think about it like the end of Super Mario Brothers. Slay the dragon, save the princess. I'm like, that's my husband. And still make time for date nights.
According to Meghan's conveniently oversimplified protagonist-antagonist framework, she's a princess, and Harry's a compliant partner or servant who takes care of the dragons for her. Meghan's oversimplified protagonist-antagonist framework speaks volumes about her self-perception and lack of accountability. She's literally made Googling the national anthem and not learning how to cross her legs sound like major problems. Yet she speaks as if she's a victim, a princess at that, and as if her adversaries are like dragons that her compliant partner H takes care of for her. Adversaries could simply be people giving constructive criticism. It's ironic that Meghan implicitly refers to herself as a princess, when reality doesn't align with your self-perception. Coupled with all the things Harry's said over the years that have only added to the backlash, it doesn't seem like his balance is Meghan's top priority. Next, she tries to guide people's perception of her parenting skills. Notice her self-repair, which is telling in this regard.
When Lily grows up, what are your hopes that she would share and say about her mother?
I hope she says, I know that they'll feel like, oh my gosh, no one has ever loved someone more than the way our mom loved us.
Meghan replaces Jamie's hope, indicating uncertainty, with no, indicating certainty, and Jamie's say to feel, as if Meghan has insight into their thoughts and feelings, not only right now, but also in the future. Thus, she modifies Jamie's question in order to be able to give an even more self-aggrandizing answer. The self-repair and thus modification is very deliberate, as evidenced by Meghan's pause and subsequent slow speech rate, in order to accentuate or exaggerate more like it, all the good things she knows they'll feel. Again, Meghan assumes authority over the people in her life because realistically, it's impossible to know what someone's going to feel. You can't predict or dictate someone's love. You can't know, you can only hope. But it isn't enough for Meghan to reuse Jamie's verb, hope. No, she has to act like she's omniscient. Why? Because this is all about self-aggrandizement, performing. Think of how unnatural a statement like Meghan's would be in a normal conversation. The emotionally manipulative aspect of this unnatural conversation is about to reach new lows, as Meghan calculatingly talks about an idea someone gave her. Brace yourself.
And so I'd created for the kids these email addresses that I will give them at some point in their lives when they're older. Here's a report card from today. Or, oh my gosh, you said the funniest thing this morning. Here's an email that I've been keeping for you.
I have full body chills right now.
For your whole life. Of all things, it's making me emotional.
But what exactly is it that supposedly makes Meghan emotional? Something that's actually happened. No, a self-serving scenario with a monologue that sounds like it comes straight from a pretentious romantic movie. A scenario which once again highlights Meghan's supposed qualities as a thoughtful and caring parent. Thus, Meghan makes Meghan cry. She's literally crying over her own thoughtfulness in this imagined scenario. What's even more noteworthy about that is that Meghan and Jamie are both painfully aware of performing emotions like this.
I have full body chills right now.
You're making me emotional.
This self-awareness, this performative aspect of the emotional conversation continues, casting doubt on the sincerity of the statements they make, to say the least.
Oh my gosh, she has loved us so much. It's about I see you. I'm nurturing you and I see you so deeply. This is why it's so nice to not have makeup on.
Right?
Thank you.
I like how Meghan, even though she's so overwhelmed by emotions, is able to think clearly enough to remind viewers that she's not wearing makeup, a point she and Jamie have made a big deal out of.
When you were saying, like, do you want to just do like cozies and no makeup? I like the idea of like, okay, great, let's let them see us.
She uses yet another made-up quote to calculatingly underline her qualities as a parent. So once again, Meghan makes Meghan cry. Meghan consistently chooses fantasy over reality, probably because reality could never live up to the high regard she has for herself. With performative repetitions like these, Meghan practices empathy, practices making empathetic statements in order to play on people's emotion and pity, pathos.
Oh, I don't know, I wasn't expecting that one.
No, of course not.
And so do you use Markle anymore?
No, not since I got married.
Not since you got married.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Good to know. This is what everyone wants to know.
Okay. No, not since I got married. Not.
Meghan definitely didn't seem to like that hot question. Notice her schooling tone, the kind that puts Jamie on the defensive, making her respond with an unreliable upspeak.
This is what everyone wants to know.
Okay.
Meghan sure seems open to everyone's questions, as if she doesn't know these are Jamie's questions.
This is what everyone wants to know. Okay, what's your morning routine look like?
Quick, find a question that won't upset Meghan and jeopardize our performative friendship.
You are. You're in the arena. And you are a living, breathing example of going for it. You're putting yourself out there. And
what Jamie neglects to mention is the why. What made it possible for Meghan to be in the arena and to be going for it? The answer is simple. The royal family. It was the royal connection that paved the way for her Netflix deal, a partnership that began with a docuseries used to criticize the very family that made her a household name. Because it certainly wasn't Suits or 90210. Well, some things are better left undiscussed. And why does Meghan keep putting herself out there, rebranding? Not bravery, not empowerment, just a calculated, self-serving effort to reshape her public image.
thank you for trusting me with your first ever podcast and with your friendship.
Yeah.
And with,
Means a lot, Jamie. Thank you.
yeah.
The absence of tears doesn't quite match Meghan's whisper or her smiling. The mismatch makes the moment feel performative, a feeling reinforced by what follows.
Means a lot, Jamie. Thank you.
Yeah, I love you. I have something for you.
Oh gosh.
You're the one always giving gifts. Why am I so emotional?
I don't know. Why am I so emotional?
The question isn't, why am I so emotional? It's, why do I keep saying I'm emotional when it's clearly not true? Meghan went from whispering to sounding like herself again in no time, almost as if she was never emotional to begin with. Wait. There's a difference between showing and telling. Meghan and Jamie constantly tell the audience what to think about them and their alleged emotions and friendship. They don't show it or leave it up to the audience to draw their own conclusions.
I knew when I dropped off that strawberry, it wasn't even preserves, it didn't have time to set. And I just knew that even if we never talked about it, that it would brighten your day.
This is a classic case of humble brag, meaning a modest or self-deprecating statement, a statement whose actual purpose is to draw attention to something of which one is proud. Here, the modest statements are that Meghan didn't even have time to set. In theory, phrasing it like this draws even more attention to Meghan's admirable and impressive qualities as a person.
Of female founders.
Could have been the day that they were going to give up. And if I can come in with a little sprinkle of fairy dust just by wearing a bracelet or doing something, and that changes the course of their business, that's a huge honor to be able to have that kind of impact for someone. It could have been the day that they were going to give up.
It could have been lots of things. This is more dramatization to make Meghan's help sound essential. The key characteristic of humble brag is that it's deliberate, and here the deliberate pretend modesty is found in Meghan's minimizing language in form of the adjective little and the adverb just.
The little sprinkle of fairy dust just by wearing a bracelet.
The implication being that if Meghan can create that kind of impact by doing so little, she's even more extraordinary than most people realize. But way to make it sound like the honor is hers, and that she isn't merely glorifying herself.
That's a huge honor.
Ironically, by trying to sound and look authentic and natural, Meghan and Jamie reveal how inauthentic and unnatural this conversation is. This isn't the type of conversation you'd have with a close friend off camera. This is the type of conversation you'd have with someone on camera, in a deliberate attempt to brand and rebrand each other.
So many of them call you M and Harry H.
Yes.
How did that start? And tell me about that.
Probably at the beginning of us dating. Yeah, I like it.
Well, I guess the remarkably short and impersonal nickname H is better than not mentioning any letters from Harry's name.
When I first met my now husband,
I call that improvement.
You have so many amazing big wins right now, things you've been working so hard on. And
imagine an actually talented artist talk about his or her admirable personality traits and big wins. Meghan and Jamie say the things they do because they know the opposite is true. Same as Harry, who's introduced next. Not by name, of course.
And he said, I'm so happy for my wife and fully support absolutely everything she's done and continues to do.
When did he say that?
How does that make you feel?
Oh, he's such a great partner.
Partner, as in helper, enabler, compliant perhaps. Meghan's partner, H. Nothing sounds more distancing and anonymous than that.
And there's something that is not to be taken for granted when you have a partner and a spouse who is just so behind you.
There's another layer to what Meghan's saying here. First of all, when she talks about H being supportive and being behind her, probably in a very literal sense as well, these terms sound like deceptive euphemisms for words like compliant or malleable, same as when Meghan claimed that she only wanted someone nice and kind.
I didn't know much about him, and so the only thing that I had asked her when she said she wanted to set us up was, I had one question. I said, well, is he nice? Because if he wasn't kind, it didn't seem like it would make sense. And so we went and...
If that was the only question Meghan had, her friend could have arranged a date with a truck driver, which is how we can be sure that Meghan had more questions. Secondly, Meghan quite literally couldn't have done anything without Harry, or Harry's family more like it. Marrying into the royal family gave her a title that opened the doors to Spotify and Netflix. Not that those doors have been particularly fun to enter.
When you have a partner and a spouse...
Anything but using the word husband, it seems.
You know, I mean, H, that man loves me so much.
It's heartwarming to know that that man loves Meghan so much. Meghan's way of letting the hierarchy in their marriage be known couldn't sound any more narcissistic. I wonder what the verb loves even means in this context. Being compliant, being careful not to offend Meghan.
You know, look what we built. Built a beautiful life, and we have 2 healthy, beautiful children, and...
Millions of people have lives that live up to those criteria, so the only reason for mentioning this is to highlight her supposed happiness in a direct response to her critics.
I never would have imagined getting here at this point. I would feel just so happy and grateful, and I really do. Well, that's too nice.
Why wouldn't she have imagined feeling happy and grateful? This sounds more like Meghan wanting to overemphasize how happy she supposedly is, no matter if it makes sense or not. A ready-made conclusion that she's had time to rehearse ever since leaving the UK. But Jessica loves it all and thinks everything Meghan says and does is amazing, which is like praising Kirk Cameron for saving Christmas.
You've brought this life to the world in such a beautiful way, and we kind of need hope. I like to say fun, but hope, and you're really focused on that. So I think we appreciate it.
Thank you. I mean, I think hope. I think as a working mom, the behind the scenes for the past year and a half have been incredibly busy and ambitious.
Behind the scenes,
but to see it all come
quietly.
to life and to prioritize what we're going to put out as our next tranche of SKUs as equally important to me as Archie losing his first tooth this week, which is about to happen, and I just hope we're back home in time for it. Frankly, being a parent gives you the most illuminating perspective, because what is seemingly so big somehow becomes so microscopic in importance compared to what's happening with your children. That's certainly how I feel, that you just make time to do it all. And I think maybe that's what is hopeful. That's what feels like the dream.
Yes, I'm sure Jessica implied all of that when she mentioned hope, because she didn't know what else to say.
We kind of need hope. I like to say fun, but hope. And
the first thing to notice here is that Meghan assumes the role of an entrepreneur.
The past year and a half have been incredibly busy and ambitious.
Ambitious? Really?
Microscopic in importance compared to what's happening with your children. That's certainly how I feel.
It's almost as if Meghan expects applause. She certainly seems aware that this is the high point of her self-promotion, as emphasized by the unnecessary convincing linguistic elements.
That's certainly how I feel, that you just make time to do it all. And I think maybe that's what is hopeful. That's what feels like the dream.
Self-promotion is one thing, reality is another, and in reality, Meghan hasn't succeeded in doing it all, as she says, praising herself, as evidenced by the negative reviews and low ratings. If this is a dream, how does Meghan distinguish between a dream and a nightmare?
well, you are a very high-profile person. You are under a lot of microscopes, scrutiny. How do you just stay focused, minimize the noise, not get distracted? Give us some tools, tactics. We all have that in our lives.
Jessica disingenuously makes it sound like the scrutiny is because of Meghan's high profile, when in reality, Meghan has made many damaging claims that one doesn't exactly need a microscope to see. This isn't scrutiny, it's backlash, and that's different. Instead, Jessica makes it sound like Meghan's one of us, completely ignoring what Meghan said and done.
So we all have that in our lives. Give us some tools, tactics.
So she wants Meghan, one of the most disliked so-called celebrities currently, to give people tools and tactics to stay focused and minimize the noise. Jessica speaks as if Meghan succeeded with staying focused, when first of all, the reviews and ratings reveal that Meghan hasn't managed to stay focused. And secondly, that the vast majority of what Meghan's done has been about damage control, the exact opposite of staying focused and minimizing noise. Meghan's projects are completely dependent on the noise, as Jessica says in a deliberately oversimplifying manner, reducing valid criticism to noise, the same way Meghan reduces it to hate, so they don't have to deal with it, and so that Meghan doesn't have to change anything about herself.
To really wrap your head around why people would be so hateful.
Jessica deceptively makes it look like Meghan isn't the one who's made noise.
If you're feeling good about yourself, go online.
Right.
Yeah, just go online.
This is another disingenuous response, because no matter how hard Jessica and now Meghan try to make it sound like every high-profile person faces backlash, the truth is they don't, and they certainly don't face the kind of backlash Meghan's facing and will continue to face. But anything to not face reality, I guess.
So I don't do that. I've made a very, very conscious effort to create boundaries for myself and for my mental health, for my well-being, and certainly to role model that as well for my children. When I am able to not even just tune out whatever that noise is, to really not give it any credence.
To create boundaries, she claims. However, it sounds more like an excuse for not facing reality, acknowledging valid criticism, and holding herself accountable. It's obviously sensitive to her to highlight her parenting skills, because she knows that some people have questioned them.
Very, 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 very.
If I just close my eyes hard enough, people will think I'm being sincere. Also, it's not true that she doesn't give the scrutiny credence. In fact, the scrutiny clearly bothers her, and rather than holding herself accountable for anything, she advocates for limited freedom of expression, censorship.
You know, I think as we look at what's happening in social media, yet they're allowing this kind of behavior to run rampant. And at a certain point, they have got to put the do's behind the says and really make some changes on a systemic level.
In other words, content Meghan approves of is good. Content she doesn't approve of is bad. How inclusive and real. What's your favorite moment? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, click the like button. Until next time.